I was in the Obama White House the day of the Newtown shooting. I actually worked in a gun control group 20 years ago, and always thought, what's it going to take for America? It will take small children being killed in a schoolroom, and then that would make the difference. And Newtown happened, and Congress did not do anything, even with the Democratic president pushing them. And at that moment, you thought, this could happen anywhere. If it can happen in a first grade classroom, it can happen anywhere. And then 5 years ago today, Parkland happens. And I thought, it's not just that it could happen anywhere, it's going to happen everywhere. 67 shootings this year. It's February 14th. It's more than, I'm not great at math, that's more than one a day. We don't know the details of what happened, what kind of gun, who this person is in Michigan. Michigan does now have a Democratic legislature, Democratic governor. They could take action. I thought it was important after Uvalde that the Congress took action, bipartisan action, even though it was, it was small measures, just to show American people that you don't have to descend into nihilism. Something can change, that we can react to this. We can do something up to deal with this. Whether Kevin McCarthy is going to see that, I don't know, but Schumer and the bipartisan Republican, group of bipartisan Republicans, some in the Senate, some in the House, that came together after Uvalde should take it back up now.
John, Jen's right. We don't know anything about the gun, don't know anything about the shooter in this case. But when you hear about run, hide, and fight, that I think grabbed a lot of people's attention last night and this morning. But that's a protocol. That's something that FEMA and Homeland Security have recommended to schools across the country. So we're at a point in our society where there is a protocol for a kid, whether they're on the campus of Michigan State or a first grader in a classroom somewhere, that your first option is to run, get out of the building. Your second option is to hide somewhere from the shooter. And third, you're doing your homework in the library at Michigan State. You got to be ready to fight, confront a guy with a gun. So we have those things. Our kids do these lockdown drills that they don't even bat an eye anymore. We had fire drills. They have lockdown drills. What did you do at school today? We locked ourselves in the closet. We turned off the lights and we hid. It's where we are.
Yeah, my 8-year-old has to do those. And the protocol is an admission of failure. It's an admission of failure because it's an admission of reality, that there's a pretty good chance that you will be confronted with a school shooter or a threat thereof. And whether you're a second grader, whether you're a student in Connecticut, you're a student in Texas, or you're a college student last night in Michigan, this is now part of every student's reality, is that this might happen. And it is nearly a daily occurrence that we have mass shootings. Not everyone gets the headlines that Michigan State did or the couple we just saw in California, but there's a mass shooting just about every day. And this is the reality that Americans, and yes, the Republican Party, have largely created for us all. And yes, we undoubtedly will hear from the president later today about this. There was that, as Jen said, the modest reforms passed a year ago. We hear from President Biden nearly every day calling for an assault weapons ban, one that had previously been placed in the 1990s. But there's no expectation that will get done. Even with a diminished NRA, Republicans seem to have no political appetite to take on something that big. And at best, we're looking at maybe an executive order or two passed. But largely, the reality will be unchanged. Those protocols will continue, and the shootings will continue.
Yeah, and this again. You look at the fetishness that the far right has become fixated on for hyper individual rights that go far beyond anything that our founding fathers ever expected. And what it does is it's a country again that's completely blown out the balance of what our founders intended. There were supposed to be responsibilities that went along with rights, obligations that went along with liberties. There's none of that now. It's one of the things that Richard Haas writes about in his book, The Bill of Obligations, is that, again, this fetishness for this hyper individualism that started up decades ago. Guess what it's done? It's left a lot of people isolated. It's left a lot of people alone. It's one of the reasons the CDC has a study out. One of the reasons we've been talking about it for years, the depression, the anxiety, the complete obliteration of communities, of neighborhoods,
of personal connections.
Of personal connections. Because again, this hyper individualism that has increased, and it keeps increasing every year, where people will look at children gunned down and slaughtered at school, and they go, well,
and
big deal, because I have a right to go buy a bazooka. And if you don't give me a right to buy a bazooka,
AR-15.
then you're tearing up my rights. Oh, I can't have a bazooka. Well, I have a right for a weapon of war. I have a right to have a weapon that was actually developed to be more lethal than those in Vietnam. And it's very easy for me just to go out now illegally, get bump stock, and make it far more deadly than what our soldiers carried around in the jungles of Vietnam, except I can take it to a college campus. I can take it to a country music festival in Los Angeles. I can take it to a church in Texas. I can take it to a synagogue in Pittsburgh and hunt human beings. This is the world, this world right here. This is the world we Americans want to live in because of a handful of people worried about the apocalypse, or they want to be able to shoot members of the government. Well, but because of an upcoming apocalypse that they fear is coming, preppers.
I think this is the apocalypse. If you want to really look at the numbers here.
This is the America that we're living in because of a handful of extremists. And again, let me just say again, this isn't a left-wing thing. 90% of Americans support universal background checks for all purchases. The majority of Republicans support universal background checks for all gun purchases. Members of the majority of the NRA supports. A majority of the NRA members support universal background checks for all gun purchases. You could say the same for red flag laws. You could actually even say the same for military-style weapons. A majority of Americans support a ban on military-style weapons. But we're not going to get there. Like, that's not going to happen, right? Even though 18-year-olds can still walk in and gun down people in schools, gun down children in schools. We won't get there. But Republicans won't even take the first steps that the overwhelming majority of their own people want them to take.
These are adults, by the way. I think these adults, these Republican leaders who use guns, use AR-15s and other high assault weapons as part of their political gesturing. They take pictures with them. They take pictures with their family holding guns. They think they're so cool.
It's
they
grotesque.
point the gun at the camera, whatever. It's not only grotesque, it's mocking the reality that your kids are living in.
Well, and let me tell you, Willie, I'm a gun owner. I've grown up in cultures with guns all over the place. Let me tell you something. No self-respecting gun owner goes around carrying guns, taking pictures of themselves and putting them on Christmas cards, or take pictures of themselves aiming guns up at the sky. That's gesturing. It's dangerous gesturing. It's ridiculous. And again, it's.
I think they're adults, but I'm not sure.
Well,
I mean, it's juvenile on top of the fact that it's just promoting a culture that is right now, and this isn't an exaggeration, killing our kids.
Yeah.